Hi, welcome to part 2 of my run through my top 10 horror films. If you're noticing the visual quality's changed, that's because I'm on my phone and not my tablet. That's just uploading now. Okay, so we reached number 6 and we've picked The Shining, amazing Stanley Kubrick film, one of my all-time favourite directors. So number 5 is by another one of my all-time favourite directors, the great Brian De Palma, and of course it's 1976's Carrie. So what you'll find with most of these, obviously it started with John Carpenter. We've got great filmmakers, sometimes with money and a lot of money, being allowed to do their thing. I'm not sure what the budget of Carrie was, but it was De Palma's first studio film. So you've got 2 great Oscar-nominated performances in this, Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie. It's one of the great explorations of kind of school bullying. I think another film that I really like by John Carpenter, Christine. Some people knock it because it's about a Denali car, but I've always loved the look of that film. But that's a great film about bullying and what it can do to people. And with Carrie, obviously, as well, because of her, again, the religious fundamentalism I was discussing before in The Wicker Man. Her mother, you know, has not explained how body works and what happens to girls as they become women. And her menstruation causes her to be, you know, victimised by her classmates, but it unleashes psychic power in her. And it's a common theme with depictions of witches in the Dark Ages, you know, well, it'd be 1600s, 1700s, the onset of menstruation. And that misogyny in religion, really. If you've not seen the film The Witch, that's a really good modern horror film to watch. Very ambiguous until the end. Yeah, to Carrie, De Palma basically is a technical tour de force. The climax, it's basically slow-mo montage, a little bit tech. You know, for something like that, it's 24 frames a second running through the film. So if you want to film slow-mo, you know, you're going to run it 120 frames a second or 96, and that's going to give you those, you know, real slow-mo moments. I've always loved the shots of Nancy Allen's character, the lips, licking her lips, and it's that sex and death thing. You know, she's with a boyfriend, she's lasciviously licking her lips, they've got the blood ready to pour. It's all brilliantly done, you know, that whole climax, and then you've got the brilliant shock ending. If you watch, the car is actually going the wrong way. And that gives it away, but when you first see it you don't realise that. Fantastic score by Pino Donaggio, and quite a lot of humour. In actual fact, the book by Stephen King used to teach English at high school. He had a class of girls and he said the way they treated each other was Darwinian, and that inspired Carrie. Obviously they had attacked, undermined each other, bullied, which is quite interesting. Obviously boys can do that as well, but it's just in different ways. But that's what inspired the book. But for me, it's an all-time classic. It was a big hit in its day, and set Brian De Palma on his way. Obviously did Scarface, Carlito's Way, Untouchables. You know, he's patchy, but when he's good, he's great. Okay, so number 4. I'm quite surprised how high this is, but when it came to it, I just thought, this is one of my favourite films. Every time I see it, it's just getting better for me. So basically there's a company called Tygon who got into the horror market a bit, and the guy who made this his first film called Blood Beast Terror, and the next one was called The Sorcerers. Now if you get a chance to see The Sorcerers, it's got the great Boris Karloff in it, and it's about a couple who want to experience what younger people do, people in swinging London. But the guy who stars in this is Ian Ogilvy, who you may know as Simon Templar, Return of the Saint. And the guy who directed this, Michael Reeves. This was the last film he directed. He died young and tragically. I'm not sure if it was some kind of overdose or carbon monoxide poisoning. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's Witchfinder General. And what's interesting about this, it's part of the folk horror cycle, as Mark Gatiss pointed out in his documentary, and it's the first one really because it's set in rural England. So basically, Vincent Price plays an inquisitor, witchfinder, Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder General, that's the American title. And he goes round the countryside basically doing witch trials. I think what's interesting about this film is it a horror film? I would argue it's a historical film with horrific elements. There's nothing supernatural here. I think that's the difference. If it was Hammer or something, you'd have the witch finder going around and finding real witches. It's horrible. What happens in this, basically, they're murdering women. It's the classic thing. If you sink when you ducked, well, you're not a witch, but you die anyway. And if you float at the top, well, you get burned at the stake. There's a horrific burning scene where someone is lowered in, and that's often cut from the film. There's two cuts of this film, and often when it shows that bit, it goes, the quality of the film changes. It's also inspired by westerns. There's a western director called Bud Botticher. God, I can't pronounce it, sorry. And Michael Reeves was very influenced by him. So there's a lot of scenes of Ian Ogilvy riding across the land, but the difference is it's a pastoral England. The photography on this by a guy called John Kekulian is superb. I think that's how you pronounce it. I suppose if you've seen the film A Man for All Seasons, it's kind of like that. The exteriors is the lushness there. It captures the greenness and beauty but brutality of the English countryside. And Vincent Price is superb. I mean, Vincent Price is a great horror actor. He can be hammy and that's fun, but he's not in this. He plays it totally straight. He's absolutely chilling. He basically doesn't believe in what he's doing. He's Snake Oil salesman. He's going around using his position. He's murdering women and raping women to get money. So it's an interesting thing, parallel in modern times, the person going around selling people an idea for their own advantage, which I think is an era we live in. But Ogilvy, the endings, fantastic. When Ogilvy finally gets his revenge, but it's a dark film. It's short. It's about an hour and 20 minutes, but there's just something about it. There's something about the way it's shot, the way it's scored, the acting, the characters. There's a bit where it goes into sort of proper historical film where Ogilvy's a Roundhead and he's with Cromwell, played by Patrick Wymark. So Patrick Wymark, the actor, has got the wart on and he's doing his full Cromwell. If you're not sure who Patrick Wymark is, if you've seen Where Eagles Dare, he's the Colonel, the traitor. Yes, there's an interesting name in here, Colonel. So yeah, Witchfinder General's my number 4. As a folk horror, I prefer it to The Wicker Man. So that's me top British horror. Yeah, that's better than Hammer, and so on. What's number 3? Okay, difficult one this because it's also a science fiction film. But I think principally if we were thinking about it, we remember it more, and obviously its success is because of its horror elements, although its sci-fi elements are brilliant. So of course I'm talking about 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. So this time Ridley Scott's a very talented ad man. He's done a good debut film. This is his first great film. Obviously he will go on and make some other really, really cool films. Again, a big director with a vision coming in to this genre. What's the opening gambit of this? Yeah, in the future, trucking, if you're a trucker in space, it's shit as well. You whinge about your pay, about your union. You don't get on with your workmates. Brilliant. I just think that's just so good. The main ensemble cast is just perfectly cast in this film. Ian Holm, Tom Skerritt, Veronica Cartwright, Harry Dean Stanton, Yaphet Kotto, of course the great Sigourney Weaver. When they first get the alien, that whole sequence, it's brilliant. It's brilliantly shot, it's edited, everything. Chest burster sequence, one of the great scenes in cinema. Very difficult to film, but brilliantly done. I don't think he told them what was going to happen to the cast. You just don't kind of get that now. And then, the film goes on, it becomes a battle for survival in the haunted house of the ship. We can't see the alien. It's another good thing, we very rarely see it. I think the sequel, Aliens, is almost as good. Different, it plays as a war film. Yeah, it's got some cheesy elements, but James Cameron picked the right thing. Ever since then, it's floundered in various things, although there's bits I like from other Alien films, and that includes the Prometheus and Alien Covenant and stuff like that. But this is the all-time classic, and it's one of the great films in the 70s, one of the great horror films. Really cool score. you know, it ticks all the boxes. It's one of my fave films I watch. Okay, so that's number 3. So number 2, yeah, I mean, Alien's technically a better film than this one, but there's just something about this film that whenever it's on, I just have to put it on. I love it, and it's 1976's The Omen. So interestingly enough, with this again, it's a big Hollywood studio. The director at the time, this was his first big film, Richard Donner, but he would go on to make the first Superman and some of Superman 2. After that, I'm not really fussed with Lethal Weapon and stuff like that. But I think it's interesting with this because he just does such a good job. And what he does is he treats it seriously. And the first way he does that is by casting Gregory Peck. You know, Gregory Peck is a symbol of like virtue and decency in cinema. We can trust him. So having Gregory Peck play the father is really good. Then you've got top casting, Lee Remick, really good. Billy Whitelaw, Patrick Troughton, Doctor Who, and David Warner. Yes, so I gave you a clue before. The other thing with this film is I think it introduces the concept of the death concept. And I think it gets that probably from Italian horror. So horror films before this, yeah, people die, but they don't always die in kind of spectacularly ingenious ways. But Dario Argento, the Italian horror director, you know, had kind of what I call death concepts. You know, he'll kind of set it up, and then something horrible will happen. It's all pretty sadistic. But with this, you know, you've got the hanging of the nanny. You've got the church spire skewering Patrick Troughton. You've got Lee Remick. You know, the massive build up to that. Billy Whitelaw, not Willie Whitelaw. He was a politician. Falling through the ambulance, and then perhaps the all-time classic, The Panes of Glass. So if we just go into that sequence, it's brilliant. They've had the argument about the knives. He hurls them. We've already seen the truck. We've already seen the panes of glass. You know, the direction that it sets up, the editing, it's setting up, it's like that Hitchcockian thing. It's giving us, the audience, more information than the characters on the screen have got. So you know, it's not like a detective thing where you're only finding out things the same time the detective does. It's like, we know more, and it's like, David Warner, don't go and pick up those knives. And then there's that amazing bit, and it looks pretty plastic now with the head going over, but it's grand opera. And obviously the score by Jerry Goldsmith is superb on this. I think like Jaws, which, yeah, there's a shout, that's got horror elements. Christ, that could have been in there, couldn't it? I think the score tends to be remembered for its famous themes. You know, the rest of the score's good. I just think the bit where they go to the graveyard as well, where he sees the body of his son. You know, they've murdered his son. He sees that the child has come from a jackal. It's just brilliant, and it's like people posing as Catholic nuns and priests. I think all that's brilliant. You know, Rottweiler dog. It's just great, and the kid's so cool. Like, and then the bit where, you know, he sees the 666 thing. I mean, it's, you know, imagine if, you know, if you found out your child was Satan. You know, it's ridiculous, but it plays it straight and serious, and it benefits from that. I like the sequel, actually, The Omen 2. I saw The Omen 2 before The Omen 1. I saw that on TV in 1982. A little story about that. I had a friend at primary school, and they were the first people to get a video recorder in my local area. So I'd watch The Omen 2 on TV, and he taped it, and of course, when the guy gets cut in half in the lift shaft, we could pause it and put it into whatever the cheap slow-mo was. So he kind of did the pause slow-mo thing, and we could watch the guy and all the offal come out, or however they did it. Yeah, and that's the fact The Omen 2's got great, I'd say the deaths in The Omen 2 are worse than The Omen 1, than the setups. I think what that film lacks is, I mean, William Colden and Lee Grant are really good, but they're not as good as Gregory or Lee Remick, and the direction's good, but it's not as good. Is it Don Sharp? Can't remember. But you know, Richard Donner does a really good job. So that's my number 2. So quickly, we had Devil Rides Out at 10, Innocence at 9, Wicker Man at 8, Halloween 7, Shining 6, Carrie 5, Rich Finder General 4, Alien 3, and The Omen 2. I'll give a special mention to Salem's Lot. It should be in here, really, but it was a TV film. Okay, so my number 1 horror film of all time is... It's a science fiction film as well. It's 1982, and it's John Carpenter's The Thing. So basically this film, as time's gone on through my life, it's just, you know, it's your 25th favourite film, it's your 20th, it's your 15th, and now this is in my top 10 films of all time, I think. I don't know what got moved out for it, but I think it's a brilliant piece of filmmaking, and the story behind it and what happened is interesting. So basically the plot of The Thing is a guy's on an Antarctic research station. They visit a nearby research station. I can't remember the start, or a guy, they find one of the survivors of the other research station. He's trying to kill a dog, he's going mental, he's firing at them, they kill him. They go and investigate the research station, and they find you know, various remains there and spaceship. They go back, and basically the dog, you know, isn't what it appears to be. And then they start to get infected, or the whole thing is you don't know who is infected. And that's the thing, that's the great thing about this film, is it's the paranoia. No one knows who the thing is. And the other thing with the thing is you don't really know what it looks like. Now, I did a bit of research on this the other night, and I was talking to a friend recently. I didn't really know about the work of what's his name? Not Edgar Allan Poe. H.P. Lovecraft, sorry, and Cthulhu, and I didn't realise that the depiction of the creature in this is what they call Lovecraftian. You can't really decipher what its form is. It's horrific. It seems to change form, and so on. There's any number of amazing scenes in this film. There's a couple. There's one where they're doing chest compression on someone. Basically, his chest collapses and teeth appear. Someone gets their arms bitten off, and the thing comes out. The weird thing is, the thing is, it clones humans, so you can have a human being. They look normal, but they're not. The thing's inside, but then it kind of mutates once it has to reveal itself. And so the way they decide to test if someone's the thing is there a blood test sequence, and it's one of the great scenes in all cinema. Basically they heat up, they take a sample of anyone's blood and they heat up a wire, and then obviously the thing will try and defend itself, so the blood will jump and the tension builds up, and eventually when the blood jumps, it's amazing. And then it's got one of the couple of classic lines in film. But I think what's more interesting as well is, like, it's a men's film. It's not a film that I think is beloved by women. It's men in an enclosed environment under stress. But I think the thing with this is they're not mates, they're not buddies. Like Alien, these people don't get along, and the main character played by Kurt Russell McCready is not only an outsider loner, he completely kind of separates himself from the male group. He's almost separate from it anyway. And I think on another level, it's like the male group, none of them are, you know, it's that thing, they don't want to show their feelings and, you know, reveal themselves, and the thing's a metaphor for that. You know, they're hiding themselves in a way. And then, like I say, like the thing becomes a way of exploring that. The ending's ambiguous. This film was a flop, not a flop at the time, but it didn't do very well. And it caused problems with John Carpenter. He lost a deal that he was for other films. But I think the reason it was, a flop, is the time they said, like E.T., you know, people wanted a fuzzy alien, and there's that. But I think on a deeper level, it's too late or too early. And what I mean by that is, if it was made in the 1970s, its paranoia would fit perfectly into the 70s cycle of science fiction and paranoid conspiracy thriller. In the Watergate era. But by the time it comes out, it's the Reagan era, and the types of films people are watching and the messages and the types of characters that they have in are completely at odds with the types of characters that you have in The Thing. For any fans of The Thing out there, and I was just thinking about this the other day, would you want to go to the pub with McCready? You know, I never thought about it before. I love the McCready character, I love Kurt Russell, but McCready's not your mate, you know. There's not really, you're not really a character. You think, oh yeah, I'll hang out with that guy. The guys, every male character, suspicious of each other. They work together, but it's under duress. And you know, it's just explores that so well. The ending, you know, is one of them. The thing, and there's the argument. Oh, he's got breath. He hasn't. Dean Cundey, the cinematographer, who did all the great John Carpenter films, most of them. Apparently, you know, if you look at their eyes, he lights the eyes slightly differently for people who are the thing. They did a pre-make of this, as I call it, recently. Basically, they did it set at the other research station where the film starts, and did the story there. But it's basically the same plot, but that didn't do that well either. It's actually pretty good. It's like sort of watching a good cover version of the thing. But, you know, some films aren't destined to find their audience when they come out, but this one is now seen as one of the great horror films, an all-time classic of 80s cinema. Some people like it's the best film of the 80s. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. You know, Blade Runner, that didn't do that well in 1982. The same reason, it's too dark, it's not right for the Reagan era. The Reagan era is about nostalgia and simplicity and other things, and weaponry, and, you know, aliens does well in the Reagan era because, you know, you've got that show of military strength. So yeah, that's me number one. That I feel like I've sort of like kind of lost a little bit of what I wanted to say. Some of the themes in the film. Obviously, there's the other thing. It's in the era of AIDS as well, but I think the AIDS epidemic, you know, doesn't come to sort of full fruition until 84. You know, we start getting the adverts then, but the kind of blood test scene and the sort of fear of things like that is interesting. But you can't really say that it's tapping into that then because, you know, the filmmakers probably weren't as aware of the growing epidemic that was to come in the 80s. But again, it's that body horror thing as well. Again, that Cronenberg, Alien explore. But the weird thing is with it, it's just the thing's just so strange. It just doesn't have a form, but whatever form it takes is just absolutely horrific. Amazing makeup effects by Rob Bottin as well. He was a protege of Rick Baker. And there we go. That's it. And then that's one film I've forgotten, American Werewolf in London. There you go. You do these top tens and you think you've covered it all. American Werewolf in London. That could have been in there as well. There we go. And on that note, thank you very much. Bye now.